What adaptations and how about adapting to amputations? And in my case, it was amputations of hands and legs. So I've actually become quite dexterous without hands. You find a way, you figure out how to do something, and it becomes normal by doing it over and again. So I type using a stylus and a special wrist strap that my wife made for me. I hold a fork or a spoon in a similar way. I drink out of a mug or a glass quite easily. I walk to the shower, I sit in the shower, I get rid of my legs, I close the door, I can operate the tap levers, and I've come to balance really well on the shower seat, and I reach the towel after it's dry and legs back on, and that's done. So dressing is a doddle. I lie on the bed, and as long as everything is pull on, there's no buttons or zips, you become very used to it and very adept.
Having to come home in a wheelchair was such a different experience than I could have imagined, because there's things that you need adapting for a wheelchair that you wouldn't necessarily think of. The biggest thing is door widths. And when you're pushing yourself in a wheelchair, you have to account for your hands on the side of the wheels. So it's so strange to try and get used to maneuvering around a place that you're so familiar with. And yet, because you're in a different physical condition, it's mind-blowing how scary it can be. And like your favorite place, your safest place in the world, which is your home, it feels foreign all of a sudden because of how different you are coming back into that. So further down the line, I've actually got a stair lift in the house now for when I need it, for when I've not got legs on or something like that. But in the early days, I didn't have that resource there. So when I first got home, getting somewhere to sleep was a real challenge because I wasn't able to get up and down the stairs on my own at that point. So my family moved a bed downstairs. So I just slept in our dining room downstairs. And in like certain bathrooms, there were grab rails that were put in and that sort of thing, because obviously transferring from a wheelchair to a different seat is obviously going to be more of a challenge when you're still an injured person who's just come out of hospital. I think people don't realise how much strength you lose just by being in a hospital bed. It's so strange. Travel for me is really important. I really love traveling with family and going on days out with friends. It's such a great thing because I'm able to do that now without having too many restrictions. There's always going to be places in the country or wherever you go that don't make allowances for disabled people, and that is really difficult to deal with. But there are ways to get to places that is accessible, and you have to just find the right thing that works for you. But one of our favourite things to do, and I would always say this to people, is rather than use the tube, try and use the buses, because the bus system in London, for me at least, has always been great for accessibility. The ramp systems and everything, they've worked so hard to get that to be such a great resource for people. And plus, you're not having to fight with the crowds that you would normally get in the underground, which is so difficult. And I think that's one of the biggest things with getting around as a disabled person, in a wheelchair for me anyway, is you always find yourself in a crowd at a lower height than everybody else. And so when you're navigating through a crowd, if you're on your own, that's really difficult. And not even just the physicality of it, but it can be really anxiety inducing, because you feel like, if I shouted up, would anybody hear me? So it's a little bit difficult. So in the early days of getting used to going out in bigger crowds and using public transport again, I was grateful to have people at my side to be able to help me through that. Because even nowadays, I think it would really stress me out to be in a crowd if I was on my own. So to know that I've had those times where I've practiced it with somebody else is really great.